So yesterday I finished the suspension lift on the rear of the cruiser, and then a funny thing happened. I realized it's very tall and difficult to get back out of the garage now that it's inches taller. So I actually had to take the roof rack off the rear to get it out the garage door. So we're going to be working on the front today, but I'm going to do it outside because I'm afraid I won't be able to get it back out of the garage. So stay tuned, we're going to do the front now. Okay, so this is the top of the shock on the driver's side, and I was able to break this loose. I put my little wrench on this flat spot on the shock tower there, and then I could turn the wrench and this nut broke loose pretty easy. I think maybe up inside the engine compartment here there's just not as much corrosion from the road junk because it's up inside the engine compartment. Anyway, so that one broke loose pretty easy. And then down on the bottom, okay, so down on the bottom here of the shock, the bolt's underneath, under here, and then on the shocks that are on mine, there's kind of a built-in nut here, and I could put my wrench on it, kind of brace it against the frame, and then that way when I go to turn this, it broke loose pretty easy. So that's how I'll pull the shock out of there. Okay, I removed the bolt from the or the nuts from the bottom and the top. So now I just gotta compress it and I can pull it out. Not too bad. Yeah, I got the bolts on this one off. Okay, now that I got the shocks out, I need to be able to drop the axle. And so this is the stabilizer bar, and I just unbolted these two. They go up into the frame there. Unbolted those from each side, and that should allow it to droop better. So now I'm going to lower it down. I'm just keeping an eye on the brake lines and stuff like that, making sure I'm not getting them too tight. Alright, so I've got this droop down. The breather tube came off, that's okay. The brake line is pretty tight, so I don't want to go too much further. But I need to, now I'm going to take the springs out. Okay, there's the driver's side. There's the passenger side. That's good, the old stuff is out. I'm not sure if you saw that, but I whacked myself in the back of the head pretty good on the bumper. I don't know if you can see this, but I can feel something running down the back of my head. That doesn't feel good. Put the driver's side spring in. Easy enough. Let's go do the passenger side. Also easy. Alright, I'm going to raise the axle back up a bit. Okay, so I reattached the stabilizer bar here at the frame. Now that the springs are in, I don't need to droop the axle anymore, so I just attached those now. I thought it might be easier to get at those before I put the shocks in. Just a little more room. Okay, so here's the new shock, and the order here is washer, bushing, then the frame, then another bushing, then the washer, then the nut. Same on the top. And first I'm going to take this. Well, you know, I'm going to put it in here first and get the bottom sorted out, just because it'll be a little easier to manage. Okay, now I'll take this clip thing off, press the shock, pull it off. Okay, then I'll let the shock expand up into this frame piece, this bracket. Moving kind of slow. Oh, I just realized I gotta put my washer and my bushing on there before I go too far. Okay, now we can go. Okay. Now I can put the bushing, then the washer, then the nut on the top. Okay, so now we can tighten it down and torque it on. So I just realized that this piece goes with the little bump down, and that centers it into the bracket here. And then you put your bushing, and then your washer, and then your nut. I gotta do the same thing to the bottom as well. Okay, so the correct order is washer, bushing, frame, then that thing, then a bushing, then a washer, then a nut. And the frame goes there. Alright, I'm going to tighten down the nuts here and hopefully get them torqued. It's supposed to be torqued down to 51. which I don't know how I'm gonna do because there's no nut on here for me to grab onto. Let's see about this. This is an oil filter wrench with one of those rubber straps. If I figure if I do it down here by the edge, by the weld, it ought to be strong enough that I don't hurt the shock. That'll give me a better grip on it. There it is. Well, this ought to be interesting because there's even less room. I don't know how I'm going to get the torque wrench even in here. I can hardly get my normal wrench in there. Oh, this is going to be tedious. I'm not going to make you watch this. So I use 3/4 inch on the nut, and I've got this little 5/16 for the flats on the rod there, or whatever you want to call that, shaft. And then I kind of get a little wiggle and I work the little wrench all the way around and then start it back over. Okay, so I discovered an 8mm fits more snugly on there, and my 8mm for whatever reason is longer, has a longer handle than my 5/16, so it gives me a little more leverage. Although it's getting pretty tight. Oh. So there's no way for me to get a torque wrench in there. And honestly, I'm afraid that the shaft would just spin if I could get it on there. The only way for me to tighten this is with 2 wrenches. And so all I could figure to do is tighten it down as much as I can and hope that that's close to 51 foot-pounds. Okay, so I've got the passenger side torqued on there. And then up here, boy, same as the driver's side, I just reefed on it as much as I could, and I'm hoping that's close to 51 foot-pounds. I just don't see any way of making the torque wrench work because the shaft just spins. So that's what I can do. Okay, so now all the new suspension is in. Now I've got to pull these, I think they're called leading arms, out and replace the bushings that are in there with these bushings, which are purposely made off center to correct the Castor since we put a 2-inch lift on it. So that's next. Okay, so I need to take these big bolts out so I can get these down and put new bushings in on either side. I used a breaker bar. These are torqued down at 127 foot-pounds, which means they're going to take at least that much to bust them loose, which is almost how heavy I am. So I used a breaker bar and I did get these 2 loose. Now I'm working on the other side and I can't get them. So I'm actually going to try something I don't think you're supposed to do. I'm gonna hook up a bar. Boy, that's bright. Sorry. I'm gonna hook up a bar to the breaker bar and get some leverage. See if that works. I think it moved. Good. We got that one. Let's try to get the back one. Oh. Might have moved. Okay, we got it to move. My head's bleeding again. It's turning. So I decided I'm going to take the whole arm out. So I loosened this bolt back here. I just think it's going to be way easier to work with the bushings if I get it off the car completely and get it on the bench. So I'm going to use a punch and a hammer to carefully drive these bolts out. I don't want to mess up any threads. Okay, I got that one out. I've just got to get the one in the back off. It's moving easy. Got it. No problem there. That was easier than I expected, actually. Okay. There it is. Okay, this is the driver's side leading arm. And I got to take these bushings out and put these ones in. And there's directions that come with it to say how to orient these since they're not centered. So I'll read those and I'll figure that out. But I don't have a garage press like a hydraulic one, or pneumatic. But I do have this. I'm going to see if I can make this work for me. I've used this for ball joints on another vehicle, and I just wonder with all these different adapters if I can make it work to press these out and put the new ones in. So a minute ago I was trying to press these out using my my kit here with the C-clamp, and you hand crank it, try to press it out. That was so difficult and wasn't going anywhere. And so I decided it was just time to go buy a press at Harbor Freight. So now I'm going to put that press together and try to use that to do this job. So my friend Chris came over and helped me with the Land Cruiser a bit, and I had such a great time hanging out and talking and working together that I forgot all about running the camera. So I'm going to backtrack a minute and just show you what we got done. We put the steering stabilizer in, and there it is, and it was pretty simple, really. We took this bracket off of here, and hold on, let me switch the camera around so I can see what I'm pointing at. We took this bracket off, just took these two bolts out, because there's really no way of getting at this nut up here without taking that bracket off. Makes it a lot easier. And then on this end, it's just connected to the steering with one of those tapered bolts, if that's what you want to call it. That one was more difficult to get out. Let me give you a different view of what that looks like. So I had to get at it from here. We realized Chris had the great idea of turning the steering wheel left, and that allowed it to clear this so that we could get my tool in there. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'm sorry, I'm all out of words today. I used this to press it out of there. and that worked pretty good. And then, so that's how I got the old one off. And then the new one is pretty easy. You just assemble it. There's directions, and you bolt it back on there. And you, on this side, I bolted it to the bracket just using my vise, and then brought the bracket over and bolted it to the frame there. And easy enough. And I thought it was kind of funny. Old Man Emu gives you the sticker separately so that you can stick it on facing forward after this is installed. Alright, so I got my shop press from Harbor Freight, 12 ton. So now I got to build that so I can build my Land Cruiser. Okay, I built it. It wasn't too bad. It only took like maybe 15 minutes or something. It really wasn't a big deal. Anyway, I did put a washer under that corner just to shim it so it sits more level and sturdy. So let's try it out. So I got the first one out off camera because I was struggling a lot and I didn't want to deal with hours of footage trying to figure out how to do this. But what I ended up doing was pushing just the rubber part out, and I used basically something too small to cut the rubber and push that out, and then what was left was, you know, just the outer metal thing, and then I cut that with my Sawzall, just pretty shallow cut so that I wouldn't tear up the inside of this, just enough so that then I could tap it with my chisel and it would collapse that and make it a smaller diameter, and then it just pounded out pretty quick and easy with the chisel and the hammer, just tapping it. So I'll put the next one on video for you so you can see what I did. Okay, so the first thing I did is I taped these plates down because everything's so glossy painted that it's just slippery and they're just sliding all over the place, and it seemed unsafe, so I duct taped them down. So then on the bottom you put a ring that's bigger than the bushing so the bushing can fall into there, and then I center that over it, and then I got one that's basically that's smaller than the metal part of the bushing, the metal ring, and will kind of cut through the rubber. I need to raise this up a little bit. It wants to go up. Okay. And then I just have this because that's solid so that the push rod can land on something. All right, and then jack it down onto it. Everything's centered up pretty good. And I'll start pressing. And it's just cutting that rubber. And if you need to stop and back it off for any reason, you want to do it really slow because of the rubber in there, it just wants to launch back out. So release it really slow if you have to. So something broke loose there. I'm just going to keep pushing. Alright. So I'm backing it off real slow. Okay. There's the rubber part there. I still need to push it out a bit more. So I'm actually just gonna push all the way through. Okay, I think we've bottomed out on something. There. So you can see here that there's the ring I pushed through, and the the rubber part's just stuck in it. So I gotta pull this all apart. There. There's the rubber part. And then I'm just gonna keep pressing so I can get my ring out of there. So we got the rubber part out. There's my rings. Now we'll cut this. Okay, so I'm going to cut this with a Sawzall. You could use a hacksaw or whatever, but you just want to make sure that you don't cut too far and start cutting your control arm. I think we're probably pretty close. So I'll give that a tap, and it does seem loose. Yep. Okay, got it out, and then I'll just clean that up with some memory cloth or something. Okay, so I decided to take one of these old bushing rings and weld it back together because I thought, well, that's the perfect size to go on the new one and push it back in without tearing up the rubber, because I just want it to land right on the ring. So I'll just use an old one, same size. I can't use something flat like this because this is off center and I don't want to smash that. I can only contact the metal on the outside. So we'll see if that works. Of course, when I welded it, all that old rubber in there got real smoky and on fire and stinky, so I tried not to breathe that. So according to the directions, they want you to figure out the plumb line, like the vertical line, when the vehicle's at rest and this is sitting, and so before I took it off the truck, I went in there and marked it. I'm sure you can't see my marks. I just scratched them in there. You might be able to see that one up there a little bit. And then according to the directions, they want the top of that to be lined up with that. And there's a little mark on here that I can mark with line up with the bottom mark. So I put a couple Sharpie marks on there so that I can see it when all this is covered in the press. Make sure I've got it lined up and then send it in there. So I got my new bushing lined up on the mark, and I just kind of tapped it in there with a rubber mallet to get it to kind of stick for me. Then I've got my old bushing on top to press it, and then I've just got a piece of 5/16 steel there to give my ram something to land on. So we're going to try this out, see how it goes. Okay, and there was definitely a stop there, so I'm thinking the bushing hit the other side. I'm going to let off. And I'm thinking I may need to go a little further, but that needs to be lined up with this hole, like that. Okay, just need to move a little bit. I think it's where we want it. Just dirty. Okay, let's push in the other one. So on the next step, they want you to orient this bushing the opposite way, with it being on the down side, whereas this one's on the high side. And then they want the distance between them, between the two bolts, to be the same as the old ones were. So before I took the old ones out, I measured between the center to center, and I wrote it down on my directions, and now I'm measuring. But of course, since this one's high and this one's low, I put the bolts in there because it's a little easier to measure it accurately that way. Another trick to measuring center to center, sometimes it's difficult to kind of visualize where the exact center of a hole is, so you can measure, you know, the right side of this bolt to the right side of this bolt, and or the left side of this bolt to the left side of this bolt, and that's the same as measuring center to center. So I basically just you twist this until you find that measurement between them. And then I went ahead and put a scratch mark on there and a Sharpie mark, and I did it on this side too. That way when I get it on the press, I can double check it before I send it in there. Okay, I've got everything positioned like before. I'm going to press this one in. Just want to make sure, yeah, there's a hole under there so it doesn't hit anything. I think we're there. That one went easier. There we go. So just for an idea how much pressure it took to drive that first bushing in there, look at this. This is 5/16 steel and it's cupped. I don't know if you can see that on the camera very well, but it bent it good. That's pretty crazy. And that's just in, you know, 2 inches. So before I start messing with the other control arm, I'm just going to make sure this one fits. I'm mostly concerned about the distance between these 2 holes lining up with the frame, and these bolts getting in there. Okay, so I had to remove the other control arm, otherwise the other control arm was holding the axle in the wrong position. I couldn't fit anything. Anyway, I got a bolt in the front. Now I'm just trying to line it up. Make sure. Look at that. Easy peasy. Okay. And then it's just a matter of lining up the back. Okay, so I figured out a combination of jacking the axle up, which pushes the control arm down, and then I put a jack under the control arm and that pushes it up, and anyway you can get the hole lined up. Good deal. Old bushing that I welded together started to collapse on me. You can see some of that. Pretty bad. And so I ended up using this from my kit. Funny thing is I probably could have used that all along. It's a little bit bigger, but it would have worked. Silly. Anyway, this one's done, and now I can put them both in the truck. We're getting close. Okay, so you can see it needs to go that way a little bit. So let's see, let's go down. Got the gloves sticking. Deal. Now we just got to put the nuts on and tighten them down. I think that's it. Well, I finished installing the Old Man Emu lift kit on the Land Cruiser, and I'm pretty happy with it. I did a couple test drives now, and it's very smooth. It's nice over bumps. I don't have any more creaking and noise from the old suspension. It's a great ride, and I actually like driving it a couple inches higher like that. The higher ride is kind of nice. I like how it feels. In the next video, we will be mounting and balancing my new tires the old school way in my own garage. Here's a sneak peek of the Land Cruiser with the lift and new tires. Thanks for watching.